All right. So, what we are doing tonight, we got a bunch of stuff to do. It's good. We're going to go back and do a quickie review of a lot of the stuff that you would have seen in CADS 1. And for some of you, that might have been a little while. So, always good back. Just go back and check things out. Oh, something exciting is happening. Um, just kind of want to take a look at a little bit about what cognitive disability is and some of the behavior strategies and learning techniques that you would have probably experienced and probably have had a chance to use if you've been instructing at all. So let's stop that and we'll go just do a smaller one. There we go. Cool. So everybody can see something that says hands on at the moment. This means yes, this means no. Yes, okay, good. I'll get some more faces up there too so I can see you guys. There we go. All right, so let's whip through a couple of things and see what you remember. This is one of my favorite slides in the world. So yeah, this is the slide deck that normally we do in ASD CI1. We're going to rip through this for maybe the next 15, 20 minutes, and then we will take a look a little bit more in depth at why we do some of the kinesthetic teaching that we do. And now with all your knowledge about teaching, it should be a more interesting conversation. And then we're going to take a look at some more advanced scenarios that were put forth by CADS. And they may or they may not be in your evaluation, hint, hint. So that will be beneficial for everybody. So ASD is obviously the biggest sector that we play in the cognitive impairment area. To give you an idea, in 2019, about a little over 52% of our students were classified as being people with ASD. So it's kind of the thing that we help people learn more about. And it turns out that a lot of the information that we've acquired about working with people with ASD works for lots of people with different cognitive disabilities. So it really kind of addresses lots, even though this is where a lot of the money was thrown to develop research and get some good strategy. The big part in green here, I think, is the most important thing you can remember, is that if you've met one person with autism, you've met exactly one person with autism. And it just does not very often represent the same. If you see somebody who has an amputated leg, chances are they have a lot of the same things in their lives as somebody else with an amputated leg. If you meet somebody with ASD, who knows? It is all over the place. The way that your brain works or processes information a little bit differently is all over it. And that's why they call it the spectrum. It is just giant and huge. And in reality, if you actually start to look at the diagnosis and sort of the way that you get diagnosed, there's many things that have to occur. And all of us probably can look at our lives and go, ah, yes, I might have ASD. Yes, that one makes sense. I sometimes have zero focus. Or sometimes I just don't, communicate well with people. And there's all these different things. But the real clincher of it is that do these things add up to a point where it dramatically affects the quality of your life? And when it does, that is when people get the diagnosis of having ASD or having some sort of cognitive disorder. It is more prevalent in boys than girls. I don't even know if they understand the why yet. It just seems to be the path. So
underdiagnosis in girls because the diagnosis was created using boys as testers.
There you go. I love when there's brilliant people on the call. It makes it so much more fun. I also love this slide because when I started in this industry, there was no training for people with cognitive disabilities. It was literally like, yeah, there's this kid who's got something, just go teach him how to ski. And it was just all trial by fire. And sometimes I just felt like kids were like bad kids. And once I saw this slide, I'm like, oh, they're not bad kids. There's something going on they're out of control with. And it just shows you how ASD can affect different parts of the brain. And when it does have some effect on that different part of the brain, that these are some of the things that may occur. And I say may because it really is such a diverse area of challenge. So yeah, sometimes when you get a kid who just seems like they're just being a bad kid, it may be nothing to do with them. It just is the way that they're interpreting information. And as soon as I got that, then all of a sudden I had a whole new understanding that I just was now challenged as an instructor to figure out how to help them learn, which was now fun. So love the slide. Let's fly down to break. Okay, let's take a break. Okay, no, just kidding. Behavior and motivational strategies. So does anybody remember any of the behavior or motivational strategies that you might have learned in your CADS 1? Sort of different techniques or little kind of gimmicky things that might have made it easy?
Do you mean like the if-then sort of strategies for getting a kid to do something?
That is a great one. And conveniently, that's the very first one. First and then. So first and then is probably the most widely used strategy for anybody that is married. First you do this, then you can have a beer. First this happens, then that happens. Turns out that strategy is really good for kiddos. Or maybe just all of us.
It's very good for children, whether they're on the spectrum or not.
Absolutely. We are all easily motivated if there is a reward that's going to happen instantaneously. So very good strategy. Shocking how well it works for some kids. And especially because it is so widely now used in the school system and all forms of education that they're just used to this. Like, if I'm going to do something, I'm getting a reward. So what is it? It also is very close to ABA, which you may have heard of, which is very much, praise for positive behavior and ignoring of negative behavior or not the behavior you're searching for. So super powerful. If you are in our evaluation and you're doing a scenario and you don't even know what to do and you know there's some sort of need to motivate somebody, this is a great place to just start. Before I go on, anybody remember anything else besides the first and then?
Pictures.
Sorry?
Pictures.
Pictures.
Like, I remember there being like some sort of cue cards and you could show them like, we're going to do this and then that, or this is what you should look like.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm just trying to see where it is on this slide. I don't see it there, but that's okay.
And I also found that some of them, it's not bad behavior, that they stress easily and they need to know the plan for the day.
Absolutely. Yep.
So once they know what the plan is, everything goes more smoothly.
Mm-hmm. So that is another strategy. So let's go to this one really quickly, which is using visual schedule or visual cards and all sorts of things. In the yurt, there's tons and tons of these little packets of cards of scenarios and things that you typically will see in an environment that's on the mountain, as well as very sort of typical needs, washroom, food, drink, those types of things. So sometimes with students who maybe aren't processing your words terribly well because they may be overloaded with other stimulus, maybe using a picture at the same time can be very powerful. Ellen was talking about using...
Just with those as well, for some kids, you might actually have to show them a physical object because the image might not translate for them.
Yeah.
So literally getting out the snow, like the pants and the boots, and like having them in a line, perhaps, just to show like, this is literally what we're going to do with these physical objects, not this thought of an object.
Love it. Ellen was alluding to sort of social scripts or some way to sort of front load people. So it can be something as simple as, let's take a list and let's write out the next 5 things we're going to do. And here they are. They could be pictures. More of a video script or a social script can actually be like a book of what's going to happen. So there's actually a book, a couple of them in the yurt that kind of show like what a ski day is like, that you could literally, spend 5 minutes doing a little story time when we're allowed to be close to people again. And, kind of show what the expectation is. Or you could, create a video really quickly on more what Amelia was saying that, maybe actually putting on your ski boots, show them this video and then like, cool, this is what we're doing. So absolutely, video and pictures and social scripting and front loading, anything that helps reduce that anxiety and sort of set the shape of the day is always going to be powerful. couple other things that might be in there. Has anybody ever seen any of these things? Look on the right, these little check marks.
Like
Token.
gaming, kind of.
Sorry?
So token board / point is almost like a game kind of
Yeah.
theory. So I guess game theory.
Yeah, it's a way to really visually track what you're doing. So if you were going to say, cool, well, we're going to, you know, do this little straight run 5 times, and then we're going to build some snowballs, or we're going to build a snowman. And then it just becomes a very visual contract with you and the student to go, yep, here's 1. All right, oh, great, there's 2. And just very easy to follow. Countdown strip is exactly the same way, but it's just a process of loading up a board with a bunch of numbers that you can either wipe off because they're dry erase, or remove because we've got some Velcro ones that you can just pull off. And sometimes that's fun because you can just let the student even pull them off. Okay, cool. You got number 5. Take it away. Good. 4 more, 3 more. And both work. One's just ascending, one's descending. Good tools. Timers in general. Oh, actually, let's go back to this for a second. See the picture of the McDonald's cup on the top? It's almost like they know about token boards too. If you get 7 little stickers, you get a free coffee. Okay, I'll go get McDonald's coffee. Timers are probably one of my favorite tools in the world because I've always had one on my phone. And again, this goes to what Ellen was saying a little bit, is that you can create a situation where it allows somebody some time to process so they don't have to have as much anxiety about what's going on. If someone is feeling like they've got a lot of inputs coming in and they're getting stressed by it, and now you're going to add one more and try and change everything right away, that could derail things very quickly. But if I say, cool, you know what? In 1 minute, we're going to go and switch activities to whatever, and I just set my timer and make it wicked visual, it can be really, really powerful. And on my phone, let me just see if I still got this. I'm pretty sure I do. I've got my favorite timer app that lives on my phone, and it is called Countdown. And it is a visual countdown timer. And can you guys see my screen there? Can you see me? Maybe you can't. I think it's really hard. So I've just set it for 10 seconds. I hit start, and it starts to count down in a very big visual way. And underneath, it shows a picture when it's all done. So something like that in your pocket just makes it so that you never have to be the bad guy when you're switching tasks either. I know a couple years ago, I walked into the yurt, and one of the instructors was just having a challenge with this young guy that just felt like he wanted to play it was nap time. That was the game. It was nap time. So I said, okay, amazing, man. I love that you're going to have a nap. Would you like to have one for 30 seconds or 1 minute? Your choice. So I gave the power to him to choose what this situation was. He said, yep, I'll take 30 seconds. Okay, great. Set my timer. I didn't even say anything. It started to make a sound. He just got up and went skiing. Like, it was good. So really good toy. Also just being mindful of breaks and giving people time to not be so focused all the time. I know as adults and as instructors, sometimes we just want to make every minute count. And sometimes it's okay just to chill out and give people time just to enjoy life the way they want to. Choices I just touched on. So again, if you have, a couple of things that you need to get done in your lesson or that you want to get done, and you know that this student has a couple of things they would really like to do, allowing them to choose the order is fine. Absolutely. With a choices board like this, you can use those pictures and lay them out, or we've got some blank ones where you can just draw on with a dry erase marker. Same idea, load them up however you want to and make it something that they just get to choose through. Has anybody had a real experience where they've used choices at all, or good story with a student?
Yeah. We remember we had, maybe you weren't there, we had that one, and he only wanted to load the chair in the same seat every time.
Right.
And Jack was with him, and finally it just turned out that they were in the middle, and the kid had a meltdown, and Jack said, you either have to sit in the middle or we're walking up the hill. And the child chose to walk up the hill. So Jack walked with him.
There you go.
And the next time he loaded in the middle.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a perfect example. We talked about that a little bit. This is another really good, powerful thing. And we've got lots of these in the yurt. Literally, they are little cards that say stop, go, and wait. And for some people, just having something that you can hold that communicates exactly what you're needing to do can be very powerful, especially in like lift lineups type things. So, I might just have the stop card. I'll be like, cool, hang on to the stop card. We'll just wait here until I take it away from you. Good, let me have that. Cool, let's move. Great, I'll give you back the stop card. Simple, and for some, it just makes all the difference in the world. So, with all of those sort of strategies, how do you know what's going to work and what's not?
You ask their caregiver or parents.
It's a great
Trial and error.
Also a good idea. So in our AOT, in our process of asking, observing, and testing and getting to know our students and understanding what their needs are, asking parents what strategies they use for motivation, great idea. Save yourself a lot of time. If you don't know, try them all. Just try one and see what happens. If it doesn't, try something else. If that doesn't work, try something else. And eventually you'll find something that gets some traction. A lot of these strategies are now really widely used in the school system. So there will be certain ones that people gravitate to for sure. Cool, so that's just an overview. There are more strategies out there, absolutely. But that just gives us a bit of a foundation, and those are tools that exist already in the yurt for us to play with. So now we're gonna take a look at why we would use a kinesthetic teaching tool, and what are some kinesthetic teaching tools. Maybe just looking for a definition of exactly what that means. Does anybody know what I'm talking about if I say kinesthetic teaching tool? Kelly, what do you think I'm talking about?
Physically touch.
Physical touch.
I try.
You succeeded. Physical touch is, yeah, totally kinesthetic way to teach. If I put it in a more broad sort of idea, it would be anything that allows somebody to experience what you're trying to get them to do without a lot of verbal communication. Without a lot of, please watch me and try and copy this. So when we look at our learning styles and we say, okay, well, typically when we're running a drill or a tactic, we want to come up with a really good verbal explanation that isn't too wordy but exact. Then we want to show a really good demo. Then when we're doing that demo, we want to figure out a feeling we can relate back to the feelers. And then we just let people try it. Well, this is all good and dandy, providing that you learn in typical manners. But if none of those really work for you, maybe finding a way to help somebody actually get in the right body positions through movement or through experience, then will allow them to figure out what they're trying to do without having to have an explanation, without having to think about a feeling, without having to focus on a demo long enough to see what's going on. So one that Kelly mentioned is just being hands-on, and it totally works. So maybe it is like in the picture, hanging onto someone's hands while you're just kind of sliding them in a little section, or helping them maybe just do a traverse, or making their first turn, or all sorts of things. When I think about hands-on, and I think about the skills that we teach, so the 5 skills that we teach. Does everybody know what the 5 skills are? Anybody name one?
Balance.
Stance and balance is one. Yep.
Edging, pivoting.
Edging. Yep. Pivoting. Yep.
Pressure control.
Yep. And
Timing, coordination.
Yeah.
beautiful. So those are the 5 things that we try and teach. Can you think of a way that hands-on could help you teach any of those? Can you come up with a tactic, a drill, or something where you're like, you know what? I think this would actually help. Oh, see, all of a sudden all the brains are working. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you could, for stance and balance, have them get in the ready position. And when they're in that position, just give them a little poke, little push.
Sure.
And see if they maintain their balance.
Yep. What do you think about the idea of like holding someone's hands to help them learn about stance and balance?
I did that with the kid to skiing backward.
Uh-huh.
And then when they're coming down the hill, I put my hands like this and
Yep.
ask them to push my hand. And then with that, I'll help them to sit better and then have a repetition.
I like that. That could be interesting. Yeah. So yeah, Riz is
Actually,
saying
I
like,
learned I learned it from sorry, I forgot his name.
That's okay.
Lauren.
There you go. Yeah, so you could do something like that. What I would be mindful of, and I love what Reza was saying, is that he has them push into his hands, is what you were saying, right?
Yes. Like
versus you hanging onto their hands or them hanging onto your hands. Because anytime there's this grabbing, whether it's you to them or them to you, they are now creating a new balance point using you. So, but pushing or having some sort of little resistance can allow them to then learn about their own center of balance and how to maintain their, what's that thing we maintain over the bottom part? Their center of mass over the base of
support.
Base of support, yeah. So that's our balance, right? We're keeping this heavy mass, our center of mass, balanced over top of the slidey parts, the base of support. Cool. Now here's a fun one that I'm sure everybody has had a chance to try, hopefully at some point, some tethers. Does anybody not use tethers, either in their CADS course or actually with a student or?
I don't think I have used them, or I don't remember using them.
Cool. So the essence of tethers is that they are, like in the picture here on the left, they are attached to either the tips of the skis like they are in this diagram, or you can attach them to the boots on like the outside of the boot, or you could use either a rock climbing harness or maybe an old bicycle inner tube and make something around their waist and hook the tethers into their waist. And at either three of those points, if a student is in a wedge, because it only works when people are in a wedge, if they're in a wedge and you lightly apply pressure to the right one, it will turn the person to the right. And if you put a little pressure on the left, they will turn to the left. Is it good? What am I teaching of our 5 skills when I'm doing this? Who's used it, got results? What do you guys think about it?
I've used them. And I don't know, I mean, I think that it was effective in the sense that it allowed the student the opportunity to kind of get the feeling and us to still be in control. So for example, with this student, he probably had more skill, but wasn't necessarily willing to do exactly what we said. So we couldn't trust him just going down the mountain.
Right.
So the tethers kind of seemed to allow him to do it, but I don't know if it necessarily helped him progress, but then he did it on his own afterwards.
So
it allowed him to, yeah, it allowed him to have the experience, but I don't know that we could say, oh, we could remove the tethers. I don't remember how many times we actually ended up using them or not, but it's not like at the end of the 6 weeks, he was like, oh, he's great to go skiing on his own. So, and I don't know if that's necessarily a realistic goal, but so I don't know.
Cool.
Well, I've used them a lot, and I'm a big fan.
Okay.
I use them basically in 2 circumstances. If a child is very timid, it gives them a sense of security. And if a child isn't listening and is going too fast, I can control their speed. I've taken kids off the pole and actually had them learn to ski by tethering them for a couple days.
Yep.
Yeah.
So now you got to put on your like best ski instructor brain, because this is where it starts to get interesting. So if we look at our skills and we go, cool, stance and balance, pivoting, edging, pressure control, timing, coordination. If I have somebody in the setup like we do on the picture on the left, so it's done to their tip tethers, and am I helping them develop the skill of stance and balance if we're just sliding around and I'm doing all the controlling?
Yes, because they still have to keep themselves upright.
100%. If they have not fallen down, they are developing the skill of stance and balance. 100%. I love it. Okay. Now, if you think about what's really going on here, and we should probably stand up for this because it's just good to stand up always. Let's stand up. If you imagine you're now in these tethers and you're the person that is being tethered, and if someone was to pull back a little bit on my right foot, and this is going to cause me to turn to the right because I'm in a wedge, is it teaching me how to pivot at all?
Kind of, but
Tell
it's
me more.
leading because if you're attached to the ski, it's pulling the ski first.
Okay.
So the ski is turning first, but it's turning more with the uphill ski, I guess. When you pull to the right, they turn to the right. So their pressure might be more on their uphill. I don't know for sure.
Okay,
It's not
so,
the skier that's doing the turning at that point.
sorry, was that Jim saying something?
It's not the skier that's doing the turning at that point. It's the ski that's initiating the turn, not the skier.
Yeah.
100%. So if this is my skis in a wedge, am I getting them to do that by pulling this back? No, not at all. When I do this, and this is funny, so if I'm about to make a turn to the right, I've pulled this back and we go to the right. Now, I think most of you have probably heard me talk about lead change at some point. Is this good lead change or bad lead change? If I'm going to the right, do I want to look like this or do I want to look like this?
The second
Oh,
one.
it's bad.
It creates a bad lead change. So it does this, and it's small. Okay, it's not this much. It is, but it's a couple inches, and now you are on this funny lead change. So you've got your feet a little bit in the wrong orientation, but your weight shifts over to the downhill side.
Oh.
So because I'm in a wedge, my skis are a little bit on edge, right? So in a wedge, you always have a little bit of edge just by the nature of your body. I've now shifted weight onto one side. Am I working edging?
I think so.
This is yes, this is no. Yes or no?
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are totally helping them learn how to balance on that edge. And if they are just sliding sideways, then they are learning about how that edge works. If they're really able to get balance there, are they adding a little bit of pressure to their ski? Yes. So this is a little bit of pressure control as well.
And you're also helping them with the timing of when to initiate pressure control, because you're very aware of when they're making that turn, so you can cue it for them.
You can manipulate a little bit of timing and coordination if you're really on your ball, for sure. So the thing you can't teach is pivoting. The thing that it will develop all the other skills, but it does not help pivoting at all. So it's important to understand that. If you have a student that you're trying to teach pivoting to, this is probably not the right tool, because you're going to keep putting them in a position that's just working on edging and pressure control and gets their feet in a bad relation to one another. So it has a great place. The biggest thing that tethers, you guys can have a seat, thank you. The biggest thing that this helps is just teaching the idea that we go back and forth, and this is how we ski. It is one of the biggest things you can teach with tethers. And to what Ellen was saying is that you will find some kids, you will find all kids at some point just go straight. I don't know where they learn this, but it's fun, it's fast, it's, and you're just like, yeah! To teach this idea that we go back and forth is pretty good with tethers, because you really are in control. And maybe if you stack it with another instructor who is in front, so the student has the perception of following somebody, it has all sorts of learning abilities there. As long as we understand that we're not really teaching pivoting and that we get into this bad lead change, so doing it a lot freaks me out. Because if you do this, and I've seen this unfortunately for some people, where this is just how everybody skis with them, because that's just what they, see worked once, and that's what it's in a report, so they just keep going back to it. And this person then learns how to ski with a bad lead change, and it's very difficult to ever get back to parallel. So they get stuck in progression. So I think it's a great tool, providing that you use it for what you're trying to develop and that you use it in sparing amounts. When would I take tethers away?
You have a student who's like that, who's been on it all the time, you know, and they do have potentially enough skills to cope otherwise. I mean, I'm thinking of a student from last year who had been skiing for several seasons and always on a tether, not necessarily for any reason that was super necessary at that point.
Right.
But it's all about whether you can, I think other people have been talking about whether you can trust them to listen at all, to slow down when it's really needed.
Right. Yep.
And in a progression, it's when you want to teach them to pivot.
Yeah. So I generally like to see that if you like, so let's say that, you know, we've moved away from the kind of learning area next to rentals and all the carpet happens to be closed. So we're like, okay, well, Paradise is clearly our sweet spot. Tethers are going to be good so they can't take off on us. If I did like 2 runs on Paradise and I was hoping to teach something, I would love to go somewhere after that I thought was safe to let them try something by themselves and just see what happens. And, you know, it's not an exact formula, but, you know, if I could get like 20 or 30 turns in and then let them try and do 1 or 2 turns by themselves in a really safe environment, that seems interesting to me as an instructor. Has anything changed? Did they learn anything? Okay, no, great. Let's do some more. Or let's change it up. Or let's add something to it. Something probably isn't working after 30 or 40 turns. Maybe. And for some students, you know what, it might take 1,000 turns on tethers to get it. But there's something about the idea of continually encouraging people to be under their total own power that I love. And on all of our mountains, there's always somewhere to do that. So if I think about grouse, you know, if I just finished doing Paradise and I kind of go right across to the Blueberry Barn where there used to be a chairlift, and there's a little tiny pitch just down by the beaver tail that just goes to a totally flat part, I could totally go there and just let them go and say, cool, go ski, let's go, follow me, see what happens. Knowing that it's just a big flat area at the bottom of that and they're not going to go very far. Same thing at Seymour, bottom of the carpet there. There's tons of area where you could find a little pitch and just let them go for, you know, 30 or 40 feet and they'll just go to a total flat. So looking for those opportunities to let people try, especially if you've already developed the skill of stance and balance and you know they can stand up, let them have some fun. Let's see what that happens. Give them a new task. Follow me. Do this. Try and make it over this jump. Any number of things. And if you think there's value to go back to the tethers to keep working on whatever it is you're working on, then go do it. As long as you can defend what you're thinking, I'm generally in. If you're just doing it because, well, that's what you saw in the report, it's not a great answer. Not when we're looking at level 2. Questions about that? No?
The only thing is it not quite hard to judge when a student needs a tether in the first place? Because I'm just going to relate this to my girlfriend trying to ski.
Yep.
And she said to me that she wants to be tethered. I said to her, no, you can't be tethered, because if I tether you, you're not going to be able to stop. But I'd imagine it's I don't know. It's quite hard. I guess it comes to experience as to when to know to use a tether.
So Josh, I can ask you a question. What skills can you develop with a tether?
All the skills except pivoting.
Great. So if with your girlfriend you're trying to develop those skills and she doesn't like listening to you or following your demos, then maybe tethers are a good option. I suspect she probably has enough ability not to need them, but I don't know if you've ever had a chance to be tethered. I don't think you have, but it's shocking how many like feelings and experiences really happen when you do it and you're doing nothing. But all of a sudden your body's getting in these cool positions like, oh wow, that works. So for some learners it might make sense. And why not? If your girlfriend wants to try it, why not? Good practice for you.
No, it was just My reason behind not putting her on the tether was because I was scared that she'd become too dependent on the tether.
Goodish question. So with tethering, I always think terrain, even not with tethering, with everything, I think terrain selection is always very, very important. You know, why are we putting someone on a pitch where we think they would need tethers to control them? Is always an interesting question for me. And if there's somewhere really safe that we could work that they don't have to have tethers, then that would probably be my preference. Even though it might be more work for the instructors, we probably got to drag somebody up a hill continuously. But if we're just using tethers because we want to go on something because we're bored, if there's not really a real belief that it's going to help them develop, and taking someone down the cut in tethers is probably always a no-go for me. I would have tethers in my pocket in case somebody, you know, we're skiing down and maybe like that last pitch is just too much for them and I put on tethers as a bit of a security net. But if they actually need them for me to have like full weight of them and get down that, I am not in the right place.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, you know, going to somewhere, you know, like Paradise or the Carpet or whatever and having tethers so they can experience some feelings, great. Using it so that we can just get somewhere just to say we went down the cut, not good enough. Cool. Tip connectors. Lauren, I'm sure you've used tip connectors lots. Or maybe not. I know you don't like the wedge. Lauren can't talk. I'm just being mean. Tip connectors have been around forever with the CSIA. It's probably the only tool that they've ever really adopted universally. And has anybody used them before or had experience with them? Yeah, Reza?
Yeah, I did
I've
use
used
them
them.
a few times. Yeah.
Sorry, somebody was saying something.
I've used them a lot
Yeah,
with little kids,
absolutely.
not necessarily with special needs, just kids.
Yeah, it's a great example of a real kinesthetic tool. So we're getting people to experience something without talking about that you need to take your femurs and pivot them inwards and get a little balance on your edges. We're just saying, here, throw these things on and go ski. Keep your feet shoulder width apart. They work amazing. Again, I would use them for a little bit, you know, if we're rocking on the carpet or whatever, or doing some straight runs, you know, try 4 or 5 straight runs and then take it off and see what happens. Are they able to get to that position by themselves? Awesome. Does this teach anything? What skills do you think this Tip Tether Connect teaches? Does it help with stance and balance?
Yes.
Benching?
If they're sliding and not falling on their face, they're working on stance and balance. I'm good with that. Does it actually encourage them to do this at all with their feet? Nope. Does it help them get a little bit on edge?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Does it work on a little bit of pressure control once they start to figure out how to turn? Sure. Which does that automatically. Does it help with timing and coordination? Not really. It by itself doesn't help with timing and coordination at all. Next one is the big pole or the 3-person pole. Has all sorts of names. Training pole. Anybody use this at all?
Yep.
Reza's used it all. I love it.
Yeah, they are all toys. I love it.
Claire, what's your experience using the pole?
I've used it with my brother, and it was for him. He had skied on tethers a lot, and not made a lot of progression. And so being able to go from tethers to pole, and you know, he definitely started out with hands on top, but progressing to hands underneath over the course of 3-4 days, you know, really developed that, and being able to initiate the turn so that we had a bit more confidence he wasn't just going to go straight down the hill, was really great.
Cool. And how's your brother still skiing with a pole, or is he an independent skier now?
He's still working with the pole.
Awesome. And you said something about hands on top and hands on bottom. Why? What's the difference?
Just it hands on bottom is less. I mean, he's not leaning onto the pole it's one step closer to taking your hands away from the pole. It helps guiding rather than, skiing for him.
Cool. I totally agree. Yep. So my question to all of you, does using the pole help the development of stance and balance?
I don't think so.
Who said I don't think so?
That was Dave.
Tell me more, Dave.
Just my experience has been pretty negative with it.
Okay.
And that is that I think people immediately rely on it. They're immediately like leaning on it. The height of the pole means that their center of gravity is higher. And it's also very negative to be constantly telling people, like, that you're don't lean on the pole, and you've start trying to think of ways not to tell them in a negative way not to do it, but all that's going on at once, I just find it hard.
Put this big pole in front of you, but also don't lean on it. It's also a hard message for some people, probably.
Yeah, and especially like I find with kids, it's fun. They're like, oh, this is great. I get to hang on the pole, and you guys are going to carry me. This sounds like a great game. So,
so I am happy to admit that is the biggest challenge with the pole is getting people not to lean on it. As Claire identified really accurately, if you can get them to hold their hands upside down, it is very difficult to put weight on it at that point, or much more challenging. There's also a really cool device that we have in the yurt, and you may not have even ever seen it, but it is called like a horse and buggy, and it's basically just 2 or 3 pieces of PVC piping, 2 long ones that are about 10 feet long, and then a short one that is about 3 feet. And as the instructor, you hang on to one end and you put your student into the U part, and that way there's no support for them when they're hanging onto it, but you still have the control from behind. So it can be a really good same concept, but totally gets rid of that right away. And then once they are not obviously able to lean on it, they just don't. And then often if you make the switch to the large pole, they are already comfortable with their skill that we've developed in stance and balance. So can be a good transition if you get stuck there. But definitely worth a try if you've never played.
Can you describe it? Do they initially, is their stomach against that U part? Are they holding the U part, or they're just supposed to stay in between it and?
Nope, they hang on to it. Yep, they hang on to it.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so you get them to hang on to it and try and almost do it in a good like stance so that they're, bent and hands out and forward. And then as you move it, well, what do you think it does when you move it? Maybe that's an interesting question. So if their hands are here and you do this, is it good skiing, bad skiing? What's happening?
Turning with the upper body.
It's turning with the upper body. Yeah. Does it work? Heck yeah. Every single time. Whether they're in parallel or in wedge, doesn't matter. So you need to be mindful of what you're trying to teach. Like the tethers, that particular device probably doesn't teach pivoting. And I say probably, I'm just going to leave it at that. Yeah, in that situation, it probably won't work pivoting. So with the pole, if you have a student that is able and capable to hang on to the pole in a reasonable position relative to their body, and what Dave was saying is very true, that if you're an adult and you're not mindful of it, you've got it at your waistline and that's at the kid's neck, which isn't terribly effective. So you may have to either hang on to it low or get low and ski a little more in a squatted position to try and accommodate your student. Or be really smart and develop a better pole for us that has a drop pole section, which I've seen as well. So with that pole, what of our skills do you think you can develop?
When I used that pole for my student once, we were teaching him speed control and stand and balance, the right position, because he was the type of kid that he was learning with hands-on and coming cut down. It was hard to hold him. So that's why with the pole, we taught him that he can sit down and low and also control the speed. He doesn't need to go right away.
Awesome. Love it. So stance and balance, you said yes. Is that what you were saying? Stance and balance was good? I agree. As long as they're not hanging on to it. Somebody was going to say something.
edging, especially if you're traversing.
Yeah, tell me what that means. What are you talking about?
So if you're guiding the turn, you might be doing a traverse across the hill. And then as you're traversing, the student is working on edging.
How do you know they're working on edging?
Because they're not sliding down the hill. They're not well, if they're not sliding into you.
Yeah, if you've just made a turn and the student in the middle, and it doesn't need to be a kid, this works with adults, all sorts of people. If they don't slide into you, they just learned about edging. They also just learned about pressure control. Those two kind of work side and side, right? So the edging is the tipping of the ski. The pressure control is what's holding it against the snow. So if they are not sliding around, they are learning how to ski. Can we teach somebody? So we've said sense and balance, good. Pressure control, good. Edging, good. In both a wedge or parallel, which is important with this one. You get to do both or either. Can you teach somebody to do this with their feet? Or can you encourage them to do this while you're doing something else that slows down part of their body? Or what do you think you can do?
I mean, I suppose if you gave very good verbal instructions, I can imagine if somebody was leaning on it more, they might start to turn with their upper body because that's being pulled. The pull is turning them. But if they were maybe hands underneath or something and you were being conscious about telling them when to start turning their feet or getting them to think about turning their feet, maybe they could start pivoting a bit.
What do you guys think of that? Maybe possible? Let me ask the question a little bit differently. So if we were making turns down the hill and life is good, and I've just finished a turn that goes to the left, and I've got instructor, student, instructor. As they come across the fall line, is it beneficial for them all to cross that line, that sort of transition line from the fall line and the cross the hill at the same time, so they're all in a row? Or is there a different orientation that they could have that would promote better habits? Oh, I like this.
The uphill person should be further along in the turn than the downhill assistant.
Okay.
So that you get them, so rather than having well, you wouldn't have any, if you did that, I think you wouldn't have any angulation, any separation.
Okay.
But by doing what I said, you have an opportunity now to have some separation.
Cool.
And angulation.
And angulation. You get it all. Did that make sense to everybody or nobody? Let me find the power to annotate here, and we will draw a little.
Hey, can you hear me now, James?
I can, yeah.
Okay, but it's creating lots of feedbacks.
Lots of feedback, yeah. Okay. So here we are, and we're skiing down. Life is good. If let me change my color. So many fun tools you can play with when you're doing online stuff. So if this is our pole, and if this is roughly the fall line, as I come through this transition, if this is our pole, and we have instructor, and student, then if this scenario happens, is there any separation for the student? And do you know what I mean by that? Is there a situation, if I've allowed this to happen, is there a good chance that their skis, hips, and shoulders are all going the same direction, or that their skis are going across the hill and their hips and shoulders are downhill a little bit?
They might actually be canted the wrong way.
They might even be going the wrong way.
Because
I'd say
this
no.
uphill instructor, they're going to be like tilted uphill.
You're right. So we might have accidentally be teaching them really bad habits by kind of getting them in this position without being really conscious of it. Where on this next turn, if I can make sure that The pole is, oops, where's my drawing? No. No, why doesn't it want to work for now? If I can get the pole more in this position, and maybe that's a little bit extreme, but where the downhill instructor is behind the situation, the uphill instructor is ahead of the situation, and our student is here. If their skis are on that purple line, where are their shoulders going to be?
Closer to where they belong.
Closer to where they belong. I like that. Now, there is no guarantee that their hips are going to be in the right spot. We could be creating a bit of a pivot through the spine, but this is closer to what I want than the first one we looked at. And if, when we go to make the turn, I encourage everybody to turn their skis, and I don't make the turn until I actually see their skis move, then something is actually really going to start to happen. And if they really don't engage, and great, now I'll just, call it with the other instructor, and we'll both make really good demonstrations of us trying to turn our feet first to get that turn to start. If that person happens to be a little sneaky watcher, then they'll start to notice that, and in a very short period of time, they'll start to do it as well. I've had more success using the pole, teaching all of the skills, but you need to be diligent in it, and you need to understand why you're doing it. Does that make sense? So this is something that probably nobody has played with yet, a lot, kind of thinking about these positions and stuff. So in our evaluation, we will spend a little bit of time as we get into this ASD section and go and do a bit of this practice before we do any of the role plays so that you guys can use it during the role plays. It's not hard once you've done it a couple times, but it takes a little bit of play. Good? Questions about the pole?
Can you just repeat very quickly what you said about the fact that if you don't initiate turn until you see the ski turn?
Yeah, so if I'm going to encourage, so I will be very encouraging of, good, let's all turn our feet to the left on the next turn. And I will watch to see if their feet move. And if their feet move at all, then all of us go. Like, we'll just follow their lead. So if I can really get to that point of they get that to start the turn, they need to move their feet, that's a really strong learning. And if not, then we will just do it and get the instructors to be as in sync as they can, so that if somebody is watching, because a lot of times people will watch exactly the way you're skiing and copy it, then that will be our secondary plan. Good? Cool. Other stuff. Time is going always. Okay. Let me get rid of my pretty drawings so that they are not messing things up. Clear.
Hey, James, can you hear me now?
I can. Yep.
Okay, this is taking a long time to get it to work. One of the things about using the pole, and I've used it quite a bit and back in the day, and people have to be really synchronized when they're using the pole, because sometimes the person on the outside of the turn starts going really lickety-split really fast.
Yep.
And it's more like playing crack the whip. So we have to keep the coordination between the two instructors in sync in terms of the turning steering angle that they're working on, so you don't get into this situation that scares the hell out of everybody when they're doing outside of the turn.
I agree. And to that fact, I would tell you that crack the whip with the pole is also a really good drill.
For more advanced.
For more advanced, yeah, providing you're trying to teach the right skill. So what skill are you trying to teach if we're getting people to experience some quick acceleration at the end of that pole?
Well, I'd be getting into starting to use edging in a dramatic way, lots of edging and upper body, lower body separation. There's lots of the more advanced skills I'd be introducing at that point.
Absolutely. And it accidentally happens, which is really fun.
Yeah. And it is a fun thing to do.
Of course it is. Yeah. And totally a kinesthetic way to learn. We're not talking about all these skills. We're just doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, when you get going fast, you need to, if you don't want to slide down this pole, you need to do something. Let's figure it out together. Okay. A couple others. We have hoops, Sno-wing, and ski pal. You see these less in our programs. We do have them all. The challenge that I have with them is that often it puts us very close quarters with people. And if crashes happen, it crashes onto each other. So if you're using them in walking areas, I think they're great, like next to the rental areas or any sort of slow slopes, amazing. Once you're getting onto bigger pieces of terrain, I would probably avoid them. And again, as long as you can make a real argument that it is developing the skill you want, I'm in 100%. If you're like, yep, this person, you know, is really anxious and being close to me with this hula hoop is great, and I'm working on their stance and balance right now, I'm good. That's, yep, 100%. If you tell me you're using that hoop and trying to get them to turn their feet somehow, I probably won't believe you. So you got to kind of think through what's really happening. And if you can make a case, I am 100% in, because there are more uses for things that I will never even think of that somebody else will go, yeah, this totally worked. I'm like, great, let's see it. You're right. Or not. Cool. But they do all exist. We do have them all. This guy gets used a lot in snowboarding. It's basically like the boom of a windsurfer. So you can get 2 instructors on it, 1 on each side, which is great to help someone stand up if they're really having a challenge with their balance. Other couples that you may see, you probably don't even know we have one of these. We actually have both of these sitting in the back of the yurt. One is called a snow slider and one is called a rider bar. And this particular guy, the slider on the left, can be amazing for somebody who really doesn't have the ability or strength in the legs anymore to stand, but is able to stand. And it allows them to then brace against their arms and get balanced. Those skis on the outside, we can adjust all sorts of ways to either have them running or in a bit of a wedge, and then they can work their skis in the middle of it. I don't know if you can see the picture really well, but they've got an instructor with tethers in the back, so they are able to help in assisting the turns and all sorts of things.
So we tried it, sorry, can you hear me? We tried it last year when we both put on snow blades, 100-centimeter mini skis,
Yep.
because there were so many skis in the area there. It was really easy to clank your skis together. So we went into snow blades so we could have some distance and try it out safely.
Cool. So with a snow slider, we won't talk about the rider because we're doing skiing. Do you think you could help someone figure out how to do some pivoting? Kelly's giving me a good face. I like it. Wow.
Yes.
Probably, yeah. Are you going to work some stance and balance? It's going to be a different stance and balance because it's going to involve a piece of machinery now to develop a new stance and balance using this machine. 100%. Could you get them to work on their edging and some pressure to control, get things to turn? Yep. Does it actually encourage better timing and coordination? Probably not. The machine probably doesn't. You could probably run some drills and stuff that you know already and combine them to get good results. So totally can work for the right candidate. If somebody has the ability to stand by themselves, I would rather them do that. 100% than give them something to lean on the whole time. If somebody is feeling like they can't stand by themselves and they think they would like this, the question now becomes, what is your long-term goal? And is this the best piece of equipment, or are we better to maybe look at a sit ski where you can be more independent? But if they really want to stand up ski, maybe this is the right answer for them. So it just depends where their needs are. Cool.
Hey James, have you used that terrain over Mount Washington there, beginner terrain?
Yep.
It's beautiful for doing stuff like this.
Yep.
It's so light and so consistent.
They've got like 4 or 5 different carpet areas, don't they, at Mount Washington?
They got a platter lift and everything. They got some great stuff.
Yeah. So when using all of these tools, the things I'm always aware of is that if we are using them to control speed, if it's a safety device for somebody, I don't love it. So if it's for a run because you're going to do this thing and this was your plan that if it didn't work out, this is my safety thing, I'm in for it. If you're always having to use it to control someone's speed, do you think it's a good device or are we in the wrong terrain? Wrong terrain. Good answer. See, I even mimicked it just as Kelly was saying it. That was perfect. Yeah, if you're always having to use something to slow somebody down, we have not taught them what they need to know about skiing yet. So there's a challenge there. If you're using it to manage fear, again, over a short period of time, like it's your very first time down the cut and you know that they're ready because you've developed the skill of pivoting and edging and pressure control and you believe they can do it, but you're going to bring the tethers, or even start with the tethers and just say, hey, we're going to put these on in case you need them. I'm in. If it is all season, I'm out. There needs to be a part where, you know, they gain that confidence. So you need to figure out that part. And that's all I'll say about it. Good. Questions about tools? As a kind of review quickly of, well, not even that quickly, a little over an hour of sort of stuff from last year. Any questions, or is that new for anybody? No, good. Okay, good. Would anybody like a 5-minute break to go grab a beer or something? And we'll come back and we'll just take a look at a few more scenarios and then wrap up the night. I'll see you back here in 5 minutes. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Are we back?
All right, are we back? Let's crank through this last part and get to some skiing in the next couple of days. So we've got a few new, did anybody have any questions or anything about the last section we did? We're all good? If you do have questions, or they come to you later, just let me know and fire them off in an email or let me know just right now. We can now talk about them. In this sort of level 2 of ASD, we don't add on a lot of content, but we definitely up the complexity of your scenarios. Where when you did your ASD 1, it was probably very similar, like something like, oh, you know, this is Sally, and it turns out Sally loves the movie Dory. Okay, go, have fun. Where now we're going to start giving you some complex situations with multiple challenges, and the goal is to both often manage the behavior and find some motivation while then employing different kinesthetic learning styles to help the student figure it out. So that's kind of what the goal is usually when we're running one of these scenarios. Are you rocking a mustache? That's nice, Kelly. Very nice. You've got a mustache filter on. That's amazing. So yeah, so I mean that is what I am looking for you to figure out during our scenarios. Can you figure out the behavior challenge? Can you find some motivation using the tools that we've talked about tonight? And then can you teach in a way that is most likely going to be kinesthetic versus sort of the, you know, explanation, good demo, figure out a feeling, and watch them try lots. So a bit of information that you may not have seen before that might help you with the scenarios. ASD has levels of severity, and this isn't used a lot in mainstream everyday today, but they use it in the medical world to try and break it up a little bit. ASD, well, autism used to be its own sort of diagnosis, and then lots of other similar diagnoses had lots of characteristics, so they smash them all together and call it ASD. So still having some way to kind of separate it out a little bit, they're now looking at someone's need or how their diagnosis affects their day-to-day life, and then they kind of get categorized that. So level 1 would be someone that needs very, very basic support, maybe learns in a slightly different manner than what is typically taught in the school system. And we end up with a lot of students that sort of fall into this area at VAS. So I can think of a number of kids that seem really, really typical in so many ways. And then, you know, maybe they really just don't acquire information at all by watching somebody, or really don't listen to your words at all, or have some hyperactivity, or there's something there. But usually it's only one sort of glaring part of the diagnosis that you go, okay, cool. I can figure out how to manage this pretty easily. When we get to level 2, now we're usually dealing with multiple parts of the diagnosis, and you're having to be a little more creative as an instructor. So there might be a motivation challenge, there's probably going to be a behavior challenge in there, and they're probably going to learn in a method that may not be what you're used to. So you become like the best detective ever to figure it out. And Ellen would totally contest this. You just try everything. And if something works, then you just go, oh, good, that must be the answer. And then you think you've got it all figured out. And then they come back next week, and you're like, yeah, I know exactly what I'm going to do. and it doesn't work. And you're like, what? I worked so hard to get this one thing. And no, it turns out that week they've totally changed the way they do everything. So this is my favorite, is to hang out with kids that are kind of in that level 2. They just keep you guessing. They challenge you to be the best version of yourself. Level 3, I can honestly say I've probably only worked with maybe 5 or 6 students ever that kind of would fall into that category. And you need to become a master Jedi to figure it out. It is amazing. I'll tell you one quick story about a young guy that was from Australia who'd come to Whistler when I used to teach there full time. And his family was determined to ski every day for 2 weeks. So they signed up this kiddo for lessons every day for 2 weeks. And this young man did not speak in a normal manner. He could use maybe one word at a time to try and communicate what he wanted, but it would only do that with his mom. And the rest of the time, he would just yell and scream. And of course, his parents wanted to go skiing every day. So they would drop him off at 9 and we'd see them at 3. And that was the routine. And so we would get out on the hill and this child would literally just yell and scream the whole time. And I'm just like, yeah, no, it's fine, everybody. Don't worry about it. I'm a professional. And what we found out through doing some good AOT on the second day, because back when I was doing this, there was no such thing or no sort of process to it. We started asking his parents, what are some things that he really loves? And we found that he loved the movie Cars. And he actually had a backpack that he refused to take off. And we didn't really get it, but it was like he was in this world of this movie Cars. So his parents, I think he was like 10 or 11. His parents had never really had any success in learning any sport, and they really didn't have any expectation other than we would be a really good babysitter for 2 weeks. So this young guy and I, my director at the time decided that I was his person, and this is it. This is my assignment for 2 weeks. And so we tried some things, and nothing worked. For 3 days, nothing worked. I couldn't, I had some toy cars I was playing with. I was trying to get them. I got some cutouts and put them on my jacket of different car characters, thinking maybe, this. No part of it. And I don't know why, but on the 3rd day, I thought, well, maybe I'll just build him a road. So I went and I spoke with the race guys, and I got their blue water gun that they do to paint the lines on the race courses, and I built a road down the easiest part of terrain. And I brought this young kid up to the top, and I said, oh, I built your road. He goes, great. And he just skied the road. I didn't even say anything. He just skied the road. So we did that all day, and then the next day we added in, him following someone always down skiing the road. And then we tried to ski off the road, so we went off-roading. And by the 5th day, he would follow anybody anywhere. But what was cool is that I was watching him learn how to ski, because I could see him doing all the things that we've been talking about, even though he was yelling the first couple days, and he knew how to pivot and edge and pressure control and everything. So on the 5th day, I took him from mid-mountain all the way to the bottom, and he skied it perfectly. So I took him up to the top of the mountain, and we skied a green run up there, and that went really well. So then after lunch, I just skied him on a blue run. And then after that, we just did a black run. And I could just see that he knew how to ski now. But it was all problem solving. Who knew that would ever make any sense in a million world? I've tried it with other kids, it doesn't work. But for him, it worked amazing. So
I love that idea of using the blue dye. That's a great idea, James. And creating a road. Instead of looking like racing gates, made it look like a road. Really good idea.
So when you get into this level 3, literally everything you know probably won't work. So just get wicked creative. Ask for help. Find other people. Talk to the parents. Do lots of AOT. See what works. And you'll come up with some idea and something will click. And it'll be the most glorious moment of your life. Anyways, promises, right? So 1, 2, 3. And you'll see that in some of the writing that you see from CADS that, maybe you have a student that is level 1 diagnosis. So that's kind of why we want to talk to them. Other things that you may or may not be aware of. Just flip to the next slide. Boys and girls typically represent a little bit differently when they have ASD. So, and this is not always, because as soon as you say it's always, someone will prove it wrong, but these are patterns that they've noticed. So most boys are usually introverted. usually great difficulty in expressing their feelings and emotions and close in on themselves. So you can have a lot of what looks like real social awkwardness. The girls often tend to be extroverted, more open in expressing their emotions. They'll really tell you what's going on. But sometimes those emotions can be on a giant roller coaster, so they switch very quickly, but usually know what's going on. Where with the young guys, often it just feels like they're a little bit grumpy and mad all the time. With boys, at times they are more isolated from others, so they will literally take themselves out of situations. Young girls have a tendency to be much more integrated in groups, but very submissive in them. So they'll put themselves in the middle of everything, but never take a leadership role. Always just be the follower. That way they don't have to really kind of, tell anybody who they are or show any of their real traits. With boys, sometimes there's acting out, which can be very physical. I don't know if anybody's ever been hit, punched, bit. Anybody?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And to that, I can tell you if you're not familiar, like VAS has a simple policy that just doesn't happen. So if it happens, okay, great, it's an isolated incident. Here's the conversation. If this happens again, here are the choices. You do this, we end, and you go home. You come back and this happens again, you don't ski here this year. There's no need for our instructors to ever take abuse from a student, but it could happen, and we'll call the first time an accident. The second time's an incident. So if this is happening, ask for help, and I will happily come and ski with you, and or get one of the other leaders in the group to come and ski with you, and we will help you define those boundaries and help hold that person accountable. For young ladies, sometimes the reactions are a little more verbal and exciting, yelling, screaming, and that can also be really tricky on the mountain when, I don't know if you've ever, besides Ellen, who I know has seen everything, I love it. Has anybody had like a real proper meltdown with a student yet? Like where screaming, punching, yelling, kicking? Yeah. Kelly, tell me your story. What do you got?
It's funny that I was reading I guess stereotype. So I have a student, and I don't know if you guys know, she's one of the twin. Two young girls.
Yep.
They both have ASD, but they have very different personality.
Cool.
The one that I was teaching is the more outgoing one. She's definitely not submissive. She will drag me to the hill and will refuse to leave because she always wanted to ski. But there's one time that it's the end of the session. And I told her that your mom's waiting. We gotta go. And she started melt down and started kicking and screaming, and just basically she refused to leave. So I have to tell her, hey, if you do this, then I will do that. Next time we'll do more skiing. Next time we'll give you 10 more minutes. Then eventually she went home with her mom, but otherwise she refused to leave.
It's
story.
It's a good battle of wills. Claire, did you have a good story too?
Yeah, we had the opposite where our student just wouldn't put her skis on. She was very dependent on the day. So I think out of the 6 weeks, we had probably 3 great days, and then like 3 days where if we got skis on, that was a huge success.
That was a win.
So and we found that after the first couple of weeks, we discovered that going to the yurt for her just triggered something and was a block. So we started walking to the top of Paradise via the other group. And that was fine. Then she would be happy. She'd put her skis on and she'd go. So, yeah.
I love it. And I love that it wasn't the same for you week to week, because that's just part of the game. So those are, again, some generalizations about patterns I've seen with boys and girls. In most cases, people on the spectrum experience some level of anxiety because of any number of different things. So we'll look a little bit more on that as we kind of move forward here. Some of the challenging behaviors you might see. So aggression we talked about, and we talked about sort of the limits around that. Self-mutilation. So I don't know if anybody's ever had anybody who is a hair puller, like pulling out clumps of hair. Can be really, quite serious. I know I've skied with a couple of kids that are just always bashing their heads onto something. And it's not even that hard, it's just that always, and then it gets a little harder and you're not paying attention and they're hurting themselves. Destruction, breaking things, throwing things. We have one guy that loves to come into the yurt and tip over the fish fountain. It's his thing.
Where would it happen last year?
It happened every week for 4 weeks. So it's now been properly screwed to the floor. Hopefully he won't be able to figure that out. Distraction. No, I can't even speak. Disruptions like yelling, running away, being opposed to things. We'll look at a little bit of opposition disorder in a few minutes, and can be threatening. So has anybody had a proper runner? Anybody that someone just takes off? Yeah, Kelly, you've had one too. Kelly, I felt like you've had some fun students. I had a young guy that I worked with like all day, and we were like, oh man, we've come so far today. Life is good. And I knew that he had a habit of running away. But I mean, he was just, so good. We were in the groove, and it's, like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We just come back from lunch, and the kid's like, yeah, dude, can I go on the carpet first? I'm like, that's amazing. Yes, go. So I go behind him, the 10 feet that I'm supposed to. And we get to the top, kicks off his skis and runs into the woods. 2.5 hours he was in the woods. We were trying to find him. Yep. So there you go. Things you should know and just will happen to you. Other things that might, yeah.
Client who really liked two things. One was KFC and the other one was really interesting, like clumps of grass. So like if he'd seen them on the drive home, he would just like, he'd go for the KFC, he'd just bolt. Yeah.
Getting that finger looking good right now. Other stuff you might see, stereotyping and self-stimulation. Repeating words, swaying, clapping their hands, different sort of things like that. They're almost like a pre-warning that maybe something is about to happen. And then can be all sorts of fun diet challenges with stealing food, being hyper-selective about food, self-inflicting vomiting, which I've not experienced yet, but I can imagine how much fun that would be. Food stealing is actually something that I've encountered a lot, more than I thought I would have ever. And if you are responsible, and luckily at VAS we aren't, but if you're ever teaching in a situation where there's some sort of a lunch process or whatever, being really aware of what happens in that lunch environment is going to be important for you. Let's look at a couple of fun things here. So let's take a few minutes and, oops. Like, why is that jumping? That's weird. Let's take a look at this scenario, and I'll give you guys like a solid 2 minutes here just to read over it really quickly. And then we'll kind of dig into it a little bit and kind of talk about what it looked like when we're on the snow. We're all good?
Still reading.
Okay, I'll give you a sec. So as you can see, the scenarios are getting a little more interesting. There's a multiple of things going on here. If we look at a little bit of anxiety, so we get a little better sense of it, they would say that there's sort of three things that usually cause anxiety. So things that are new or novel, anything that's unpredictable, and then when we have a perceived lack of control. So when we look at this scenario, there's a list of things there that may bring on some anxiety. So the narrower ski slope, not being able to do his large turns that he typically does, Jordan's speed increase, so the fact that he's going at a different speed than he's normally used to, the number of skiers on the hill, how fast all the other skiers are going, the race course as a distraction. There's a whole bunch of stuff here that is possibly getting into his head. So my question for all of you is, what in the world are we going to do at this point if we are now all of a sudden teleported into this lesson where we find this instructor starting to struggle a little bit?
I think you need a bit of a circuit breaker, because recognizing that continuing on down that slope at the moment isn't the best thing for him and probably isn't going to get you anywhere with the lesson. So perhaps kind of going back to, again, knowing the student, whether or not you've been able to successfully kind of move on to or distract with other things in the past. Because for some people, saying something like, I'm thinking maybe like, hey, we're right by these trees. You know what I want to practice? You did a really good job throwing that pole at me, actually. Can we practice that with snowballs? Because I feel kind of cranky right now. Let's smash some snowballs at that tree. Just to change what's going on in his head in that moment. And it gives you a bit of time as well to think how you're going to get out of the situation.
Perfect. Love that. Has anybody used anything like that in the past?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, Amelia.
I was just going to say, you do also want to be cautious that you've kind of probably just been giving that student a lot of instructions. He's taking a lot of new information. Then all of a sudden, okay, now we're going to go over here and we're going to go snowballs. Like that just might be it. So just kind of be mindful of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really important just to acknowledge how they're feeling. I'd say that's what I would do first. Just go, wow, this is not the day we expected. Things have definitely taken a turn. We'd better pull over, calm down, and make a new plan.
Love that. Yeah, no, I think I totally agree with you. Just yeah, getting on their same level and go, yeah, this is whew, there's a lot, man.
We don't like this.
Anybody else want to do anything else? Anything you think might work or that you've used in the past? How are we going to get out of this mess? We're now sitting at the top of a run. It's not practical to jump on a chairlift and go back down. It's, quite a distance to walk. What are we going to do?
Sorry.
Who's going? Kelly?
Okay. Sure. I had a different student. I guess this is, to me, this is kind of like similar to throwing tantrums. Well, it's very different, but I mean, in a way. But anyways, I have a student who, we were on top of, in the middle of the hill actually, so we can go up or go down. So, and he was freaking out, and so, like, basically, I did what actually Amelia was saying. I actually just stopped the activity we're doing and just say, that's Bill Snowballs and that's Bill Snowman right now. And we just kind of went to a corner, just kind of distract her a little. And then he's got happier and eventually we skied down.
Cool. Awesome. Somebody else was trying to say something. Was it Abigail or somebody was saying something?
It was me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just in terms of like a thing that I was thinking of once we have calmed that situation down a bit is maybe trying to find a fun way to do like slide slipping drills.
Yeah.
Because that's always like I did that with my now husband when he had a meltdown at Whistler.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Glad you brought that up, because what I was going to say is that these are really good examples of disrupting that fixated behavior at that point in time. And then you may be able to get them to walk down a portion of the run, have a new look at things, and then maybe a portion where they can start skiing again. But what you just did in terms of side slipping is a really good thing to do. Return to a skill or a drill you've been doing earlier, perhaps on easier terrain, and try to apply it there. The description, if you look at it, is applicable to all new students, because anxiety is typically rises up if they hit a bit icy surface, if they're close to the edge of an embankment, if there's trees in their ways. So if you can use other skills for how to manage that and bring their anxiety down and bring their control up, it works. It's a good thing to think of for everybody. So when you're taking somebody down the cut or the side cut or whatever new terrain you're tackling, it's really good to know your terrain so well that you can choose to take it at a different angle to traverse it, or wait till the crowd goes by, because that happens a lot at Cypress. You see people coming off the Raven Share and the main Eagle Chair at the same time, and all of a sudden there's a traffic jam. And that's a really good time to pull off the side and do those disruptive activities like snowballs or snowman or whatever else.
Awesome. Anybody else have any other crazy ideas that they would try?
Yeah, I would try follow the leader.
Yeah.
Just try to have the student, follow you and stick as close as possible to you to give them a level of comfort.
Love it.
And a distraction of just focusing on you.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Abby, what do you got?
I was going to say the same thing with side slipping, but then also one thing I did try on one run with a skier was just like, I was okay, I'll ski like a turn beside you. So he was much smaller than me, so I didn't have to worry if he had lost control or something like that. But I was just like, I'll be beside you. And then he felt comfortable after that and then continued down. So
cool. All great ideas. Anybody else got a good idea? Or
what I will do is I will play some calming music from my phone. So
That's
take
great.
the focus away from because the students obviously get anxiety from the environment. So the focus can be changed from environment to a device and can forget what's happening around. So it might calm down. And
He's speaking about me.
Does anybody know what a 3-point hold is on somebody that you can ski with this?
And I've also had them hold my pole.
Mm-hmm.
Just said, look, we have a couple of tight turns, grab my ski poles,
Yep.
hold them across. We make the tight turns, and then when we're someplace a little calmer, we can carry on.
Absolutely. Most runs often have bamboo around too. You can grab a piece of bamboo that's in the side of the run and do the same thing. Just use it like one of the giant poles now.
What's 3-point hold?
So a 3-point hold involves your student being in a wedge, and you ski from behind them, and you put one of your skis between their feet. And then you hang on to their outside hip and their knee that is closest to you. And what you're able to do is essentially turn them with their hips one direction and edge them the other direction with their knee. And you're kind of skiing a little bit hunched over, but in that position, your wedge is matching their wedge. So you are able to be very strong about it. And just by leaning your weight and pushing a little bit on their hip or their knee, you can get them to turn with you. So in really sketchy situations, or if they're just totally frozen up or something, you can totally just do this. Easy, easy, easy. Obviously, maybe not in a COVID world, but remind me when we're on the snow, and I will find somebody and we'll do it one time just so you can see it. But it works. Like I've done it with that 250-pound person and ski them off the mountain like it's no big deal. So it's a good technique. If we get into the official what's on the text here, we'll just kind of fly through this. Stop what you're doing would be the first thing. Evaluate the dangers. Do some breathing exercises, or I love the idea of a bit of music or something just to get them chilled out and refocused. Could be conversation, could be all types of things. Talk to the person about what's going on if that is an option for them to really try and express what is going on for them so you can really identify it. Then determine some sort of plan and let them be in on the plan. Like, you know, we talked about sort of the shape of the day or giving people some sort of structure. Like, tell them exactly what your plan is. Dude, here's the plan. You see, from this pole to that pole, we're going to try this thing. Let's do this. And just let them be really involved so that they know what's going to happen. And then try it. And maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. And that's okay. Hopefully you got 50 yards down the hill.
I really like that music idea. I haven't had anybody suggest that before.
So now you come up with a different idea. And in the grand scheme of it all, if nothing is working, if you really are just stuck at a hard road and you've tried to call, you know, your program coordinator, whoever, and ask for some help, and that's not going anywhere or it's just not successful. And if you think that now this is a real dangerous situation because you are now in a bad spot on the mountain, people can't see you, it's getting cold, your student's getting cold, just call patrol. Get out of there. Like, if that is your last resort, it's your last resort, and I'm totally good with that. Patrol's totally good with it. You know, let's just make sure that, you know, the safety part of it gets sorted out. If it's unsafe and you can't figure it out, just get out of there. Good? Cool. I've got a few more minutes here. Is everybody okay for another 5 minutes or so if we look at a couple more little quick things, and then I'll let you fly? I don't think anybody's running out at 9 o'clock on a night when all the restaurants are supposed to be closed. And Gross is already closed, so nobody's trying to get skiing. So just a quick look at a couple other things that are going to come up in the other scenarios that we actually run on the snow. So separation anxiety, anybody know anything about it or experience it or have it? Or Kelly's like, I've got that all the time, every time I have to go to work.
I have a puppy that I got in COVID, and so it was like #1 priority to avoid separation anxiety. I mean, you can see our lovely definition there. It really is just excessive anxiety, concern, separation from a person or your home or a familiar situation. So it is a real thing. It is really debilitating for some people. There's a list of symptoms there you can check out. Often, I don't know if you've ever had anybody that's actually like at a really high level, but I've worked with a woman that it was amazing she ever got to the mountain. Amazing that her family got her there. And it took us like all day just to get to the rentals. She was lost when her family left for their ski lesson. She was just depressed all of a sudden, didn't want to move, didn't want to do anything. And it just took a lot of letting her find the space and reassuring her that, you know, everybody was still close by and that her life wasn't falling apart. And yeah, eventually she just kind of came around on her own. It's very difficult to push somebody through this. With a lot of other things you can nudge and push and distract. This is a little bit trickier. So that's actually about the scenario. I shouldn't give you those answers yet. The other thing I'll tell you when we're running our scenarios is that we're going to give you the magic power to control time, which is wonderful. So if you're in a situation and I've given you some curveballs and you're like, you know what? I think I would just totally chill out here for 20 minutes. You can just tell me that and we'll just advance the clock 20 minutes and assume things are okay now. So we'll be able to manipulate time to get through the scenarios. ADHD, is that anything anybody's ever heard of? You know what it stands for? Attention deficit activity disorder.
Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Yeah. These are a lot of the kids that just seem like they're bad kids. They just seem like they can't focus. They don't listen. They, you know, kind of on their own agenda. Easily distracted. As far as symptoms for inattention, yeah, easily distracted. Have challenges finishing the task. I think that's where I think I have ASD sometimes. Doesn't appear to listen. Doesn't pay attention. Makes lots of careless mistakes. Forgets about daily activities. Yeah, that totally really started to sound like me a lot. Can't organize daily activities. Doesn't like to do things that require sitting still. Often loses things. And tends to daydream. I have ASD. Maybe ADHD. On the hyperactivity side, lots of squirmy, fidgety. Fidget spinner, best toy ever created in the world. Anybody own a fidget spinner? Yeah. On hyperactivity, often doesn't want to stay seated, has trouble playing quietly. This is really, I'm right in here. I guess it's just not debilitating for me though. Always moving, running, climbing, talking excessively. Wow, this really is me. And always on the go. Oops. If I can hit the right button, we're good. On the impulsive side, has troubles waiting their turn, whereas where that stop and go card can be really, really powerful, that we talked about as a strategy earlier. Blurts out answers and interrupts people often. How do we overcome all that kind of stuff? What do you do? If you're working with a kiddo with ADHD, how do you deal with this?
AOT, you know, you're asking as well what has already worked, because this person doesn't exist in a bubble for VAS.
Yep.
They exist in the world, so there would already be some things that, you know, their parents or that they would be able to tell you themselves that they're interested in, or that helps them focus.
Cool. Yeah, so doing really good AOT to learn what has been successful already. I love that as a strategy.
Yep. And then sometimes go ahead.
I was going to say countdown lists.
Yeah, something that's got some physical structure to it. That can be really good for sure. Countdown strips or, yeah, absolutely. Lauren, what were you going to say?
No, and sometimes they may have difficulty detaching from an activity they're already in.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we talk about attention deficit, they may be actually locked on to paying attention to something and not making the transition to the next activity. So that can be part of it. It's also going to say that parents probably know which diet to put them on in terms of certain things will lead to increased hyperactivity. And then the other thing is, what environment have you got them in? I would think the yurt might be very distracting to a lot of hyperactive kids who come in. There's so many things to look at, so many interesting toys there. So it might be better to work with them in more of a quiet surround.
Yep, good points. Anybody else have anybody work with any kiddos with ADHD or?
Yeah, for me, so I work at a summer camp and most of the children there have ADHD.
Amazing.
And I think like the biggest takeaway from it is as long as you give them some type of direct task that they're willing to do kind of thing, and you just keep them active with some sort of structured task, that usually limits like their outbursts or anything like that. Most of the problems I feel like they come from when there's nothing to do, when they're like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna find something to do. And usually the thing that they choose to find to do is not a great thing, so.
My teammate for rollerblade racing he's my age, but he's also very ADHD. And he'll have 3 conversations going at a time. So I have to select the conversation and ground him to stay on course. So it's not something you necessarily grow out of.
Oh yeah, no. I think my very favorite thing that I developed a number of years ago is that if I have somebody that is just like wound up, ready to rock, I will make a movie with them. And I will whip up my iPhone and shoot every scene. And weirdly, all of my scenes seem like they're skill development. I don't know how that always works, but it's like, oh my God, we need a picture of this happen. Okay, let's do this. And they're like, by the end of it, we've made a whole entire feature film. And if you have an iPhone, it can make a trailer. I don't know if you've ever used it, but it'll just allow you to drop in exactly what you need. It's like, cool, take a still photo of the person. Good, do a 3-second video. You just keep dropping them in. It adds music to it, everything. End of the lesson, they've had a great time. You kept them busy. They accidentally learned, and they get to take home a video trailer. So,
great idea.
Good fun. Cool. Last thing we're going to talk about, and then we're done. This thing called ODD. Does anybody know what ODD is? Ooh.
Oppositional defiance disorder.
Yeah. Nice. Who's had some fun with ODD? Anybody?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. Lauren, what's your story?
Oh, I worked as a behavioral interventionist for a long time with kids get angry all the time and flare up. And it could occur when they haven't had enough sleep, could occur when they had too much sleep, could have been occur when they had dietary issues. It could have just be something chemically a mystery with what they're doing, and then to try to get them to focus in, it can be really, really tough. If they're also physically aggressive, it's you got to back away, you got to take care of your safety first.
Yep.
And sometimes it doesn't make much sense. It can be loud outbursts, it can be expressions of anger. Surprisingly high incidence in this day and age. The CBC had a really good documentary on it about a year and a half ago. Much higher occurrence than it used to be.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, some of the things you're going to see probably as symptoms: throwing repeated temper tantrums, excessive arguing with adults, especially or anybody in authority, actively refusing to comply, deliberately trying to annoy or upset people, like people that are poking always at people or punching them or all that kind of ridiculousness, blaming others for their mistakes, having frequent outbursts, being spiteful and seeking revenge, swearing and just being obscene. Oh my goodness, I could tell you stories.
My agency gets involved often. Actually, I'm a social worker for MCFD. We
go.
often get involved at our level when the child is now 13 or 14 and approaching adult size, so that it's very risky for all the family members. When they're small, you can, if they're your own kids, you can physically steer them, but as they get to be bigger size, this becomes a really challenging, complex area. And we usually do a wraparound consultation with psychologists involved and other specialty workers involved on this.
Yeah.
James, I'm not sure what the prevalence of having kids who have FASD, fetal alcohol syndrome disorder, coming through the VAS, but ODD is somewhat
similar.
It's somewhat similar and often like diagnosed as well. So it's something that often comes up. So.
Yeah.
The really important things to remember, and here it is. Here's the biggest takeaway from it. And I'll warn you now, this could be in your evaluation. So arguing is a fool that keeps everything alive. So you just can't argue back. You need to take a position where you have an emotional indifference to it and encourage it to calm down. But, if someone's going to yell and scream at you and you just keep speaking to them in a very calm voice, eventually it will subside.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you take a strong opposition, they're going to dig in. It's going to be just a power battle. So you need to find some common ground and just work through it. I will give you and leave you with one story, and then we'll wrap this up tonight. I had a young man that I was skiing with, and it's funny when I read these scenarios that they have in here, I'm like, oh, it's a little bit of that one and a little bit of this one and a little bit of that one. So great skier, skied always like blues and blacks, really good skier, but always skied exactly the same thing in the same order every single day. And he was just in this routine, and he had everybody trained. And we got to a point, and a run was not safe to go on. So I'm like, yeah, no, we're not going this way. And he's like, no, this is what we do. And 25 minutes, we're in a standoff where I'm physically blocking him from going down this run that's not safe. And he's yelling at me, and now I've got the attention because we're close to the bottom of Emerald Chaired at Whistler, where there's about 1,000 people waiting to get on the chair, and they're all watching this. And the lifties are watching me. Lifty comes over, he's like, man, do you need something? I'm like, no, we're all good. And it was just became this battle. And, we just locked horns. And for half an hour, it just went on, nothing. Nice hot day. I'm not worried about any safety stuff. I'm like, great. I'm digging in. I'm good. I'm good to sit here and wait this out. And I keep just talking to him in a calm voice. I'm like, yeah, no, we can't go down there. And he's yelling at me. And finally I looked at him, I said, listen, if I could get you on the next chairlift, would you go? He goes, you can't do that. You don't have enough power. I said, come here, let's go. And I yelled and I grabbed him by the hand and we walked over there, clicked on our skis. The lifties watched me. They're like, dude, this guy's going, just go. On the chair. Never had a problem with the child since. We skied for years together. But there was that moment where he was going to find out who was going to win. And all of a sudden he's like, oh, James got some power. Okay, we're good. So I didn't know that was going to work. I didn't have any good information. I just took a shot and it worked. Again, you're going to get in the situation. If you do and you're stuck, call for help. Call your supervisor. Call me. Call whoever. We will come and help support you. And if it's not safe, we will find a way to make it safe by using patrol. I thank you guys for coming to this. I hope it gave you some good refreshers and knowledge. I hope I've kind of laid out the expectation for what the scenarios are going to look like. We will have a little opportunity to talk about some of the tethering stuff or using any of the kinesthetic devices before the evaluation, so we can make sure you feel good about those parts. And again, if you kind of think through what skills you're going to be developing when you're using them, I will say yes to about anything if you've got a good plan for it. The scenarios are going to be a little tricky, like the one you got to see tonight. They've got a lot of moving parts in them, but you'll be able to work in pairs and figure out good solutions. Any questions or thoughts about kind of what's going on? Awesome. Well, I suspect I will see you all in the next couple days, with the exception of Ellen. Ellen, thanks for dropping by.
Great, Jim. Thank you very much. That was good.
To do some outrigger stuff in the next couple days. And as I mentioned, we're going to kind of chop up that outrigger session and get everybody a little more time in Asitsky if they would like. So we'll give some options to get some more training there. And then some of you start taking the evaluations as early as Friday. So I'm excited about that. And this week, let me know what else you need or you feel like you need to get to where you want to be. But I've been really impressed with our knowledge so far and watching everybody grow. And I think we'll just continue on this trend and have a lot more level 2s next year.
Thanks very much, James.
You're super welcome. Any questions or anything to finish off, or we're good?
Are you going to send us that presentation?
The one from tonight? I will make a video of it and post it on YouTube, and I'll send everybody out the link if you want it. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks.
See you
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, James.
You're welcome.
Thank
See
you,
you soon.
James.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
James, Beck said she couldn't make this. She was in I think a work meeting. So she will watch the recording.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's why we made the recording. Try and make it accessible for everybody. We'll see you guys.